Today on What Went Wrong, telling your characters some they need to know. Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I made over 40 feature films. And one of the most common phrases you'll ever hear throughout the Innocent Saga and the Ponders universe is, there's always a guy named Smokey. My very first Smokey, he was Weasel.
Oh, yeah.
But he took place in the Night Watchman. Now, he was just called the Weasel because before I thought of Smokey, that's just the name I gave him. Because you always got the Weasley guy that's
the little weasel, yeah.
And it might be the second scene of the Innocent Saga, I explain exactly what a Smokey is in our universe. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, in a recent episode we just talked about Deus Ex Machina. And this is something I would call Deus Ex data dump. Your character just needs some information. And
which is the way you go. That's I was going to the Smokey.
I always got to go to Smokey to get information. And in that scene, I'm talking to Diane, and she's like,
"So fill me in on this Smokey guy."
Okay. Do you remember those old 70s cop shows whenever the detective would hit a dead end?
Yeah.
The detective would always go visit this newspaper vendor or shoe shine guy. He was always into a little bit of everything, but you never knew his full story.
Right.
It was almost like the writer couldn't figure out how to get the detective from point A to point B. So he'd have him go visit this guy.
His informant, his contact.
I got
a guy.
Yeah. And of course, in the old detective TV shows, you had to do that because you didn't have the time.
No.
You had 40, 45 minutes to tell the story, and you couldn't have him go and track all this cool stuff down. Just get to the point, get to the character there. And that's a device that I use a lot.
Yeah.
But I try to make it enjoyable and fun,
right.
Not just make it a data dump.
Right.
I mean, the things that I've put my Smokies through. The one drowned himself.
Smokey.
My Smokey, the first one blew his head off. There's not.
Yeah. You shot one and then you staked him.
Yeah, the Bad Mojo, because he was in three of them.
Yeah.
He was in three of the. 2 or 3 of it. Yeah, I think he was in 3 episodes. Yeah, because he was in Barrio Angels, then Shadow Dragon. I want to say he was in something else. Oh, Cartel Killers. Yeah, he was in Barrio Angels, Cartel Killers, and then he met his end in the Bad Mojo Project.
She shot him and then she staked him.
And there was actually an actress, an original. Eileen was originally that character.
Oh my God, are you filming all this?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the shot. I have to push
Oh, okay.
I like
scheduling conflicts and whatnot. Yeah, you've mentioned that before when we were talking about the vendors.
Like, oh my Lord, she's great.
Well, just watching the old Night Watchman again, her with that Russian accent when she was Kim.
Are you crazy?
And she'll be the first to say this, that she's about as coordinated as Lucille Ball.
Not working! I hate this!
She just can't,
This doesn't work
we
out.
put her in this big, fight stuff and everything. And she did her best, and, she did a great job. But it was funny if you know Eileen as opposed to the character she played. Because she's just the sweetest, cutest, adorable little thing. And then you put her
much
in
better
Russian...
as a Smokey as opposed to a Russian Russian hit woman. Okay.
Yeah. But she was originally Mike's partner in that before Tara came out. And there's actually 1 or 2 scenes with Eileen in that role.
Cut. I'm sorry. So you went through some changes.
Did you feel me, Charlie? Please don't let me fall.
So Smokey met his end in Bad Mojo Project, but I just kept him going, and he became that running gag,
that ubiquitous thing that kept happening.
Yeah.
So what's this guy's name?
Smokey.
Smokey.
There's actually a guy named Smokey.
Of course there's a guy named Smokey.
There's always a guy named Smokey.
Now, I had always intended to have in Chapter 10 was all of these Smokies were sent from the future. And were sent back because there's the scene in Return to Innocence when DeMarcus or Ruby and Montoya go and interrogate the Smokey in that bar.
I've heard all about you, Shadow Dragon, one of the best hitters out there. Part shadow, part smoke, part fire. Trained by the monks of Tibet and the Yakuza of Japan. Educated at Harvard, part-time professor at Yale. Smart, vicious, and quick.
And then there's a scene at the Battle of Armageddon where the betas are sending people back in time. And they're giving them hypnotic suggestions and telling them what they know and then sending them back in time. So we'd originally planned on that being the case, that's where these Smokies were. They were planted throughout.
Educated at Harvard. Part-time professor at Yale. Smart, vicious, and quick. The Shadow can find a girl at a small warehouse in San Antonio.
Of course, things evolve and things change.
Things
You look
change.
at it and go, you know what, that doesn't really work. Let's do it this way. So,
The science doesn't make any sense, like the science ever makes any sense.
yeah.
But for the plot, it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So that makes that makes sense.
Yeah. So there are times where you're going to have to just unload a lot of data, which we call exposition.
Right.
So that would probably make it a Deus ex exposition would probably
There
be
you
a better term for that. Which you have to do sometimes. So you try and do your best to get this information across. And yet still be interesting and intriguing for the audience.
Right.
One of the things that I use in my classes is there's a script that I wrote called The Get Back, and I stole one of the scenes from The Get Back and put it in Serial Rabbit 5. And there wasn't as much exposition in Serial Rabbit 5 that was in the original script, but it was to set these two characters up. It was a woman, a guy and a girl, and they were on the run. They had just stolen some cocaine, and we were trying to establish the characters. And I did it with absolutely no dialogue. If you go and watch Serial Rabbit 5, you see this. You see the two characters. They never say a word in the entire
car.
scene where they're meeting. We show everything. They're driving. They start making out while they're driving. You understand her character. She holds a gun and playful. You understand they're lovers. And then she throws the gun. It lands on a duffel bag full of cocaine. Oh, okay. So you're starting to put that together. She's trying to have sex with him while he's driving. You realize, oh, she's the carefree one. She's going to get the. And that was like one of the things I asked. I'll hand out the script to my students, and I'll say, okay, what did you learn from this scene? And like one of the first students that ever said anything was, she's going to get him killed.
And she did.
Yeah. In the original script, there was a billboard that they passed that said, I think it was Quail Bush. It was a Quail Bush billboard. So it set the time period. It said, okay, we're in the late 80s or early 90s. And we also saw the license plate. We saw bullet holes in the car. So you get this little information. All this is exposition that you're getting.
Right.
And to do that without having to sit there and say, okay, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Which I'm guilty of. Which the very first Smokey and the Innocent Killers sets the whole ball in motion with the coins, explaining what the coins are, but he doesn't give all the information. He just gets them on the path.
Yeah. But in that situation, like the first Smokey, yes, the scene where you're watching all that crazy stuff happen, that's amazing. That's a really, really, really good device. And there's all kinds of ways to do that, like the gun, and she's playing with the gun. So you're like, okay, she doesn't really know what she's doing with that. They're certainly not professionals, because they would not be doing that if they're professionals. Plus, it's a big ass revolver, so no professional uses a 6-shot revolver to go commit crimes. That's your backup gun or a range gun. That's certainly not. Hey, we're gonna go get some cocaine. What should we use? I'm at that 44 Magnum right there with just 6 rounds. It takes a long time to reload. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. That's not what you use. And you're driving along and then hurling the gun back into a bag of cocaine. You're like, okay, not professionals. They're obviously whatever else, a mismatched group of whatever else. And then as you're driving along, you could have to say, leaving Las Vegas, enjoy your time. Oh, okay, well, we know they came from Las Vegas. Or 2022, vote Republican or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, well, and so you can do all that kind of stuff, or you can have, certain times you get some people, they'll talk about sports scores or current events on the radio. The Dodgers beat the, so-and-so yesterday, and 1985 World Series went really good last night. There's all kinds of ways to do that don't involve them dumping the information on you.
Yeah, because once you start doing that and you have the character asking all these questions or talking, they're talking to their partner and they're repeating stuff that they should already know.
Right.
To just inform the audience of this information.
That being said, though, the beginning of the Innocent Saga is one of my favorite scenes because of Smokey. Once again, I love the movies that say, sit back, relax, we're going to with your mind. And the Innocent Saga starts off like that. Because first they're They're at a bar. They're having some time off, and you're thinking, oh, just a typical cop thing, you know. So you've established they're police, and they get a phone call, you know, and then he has to go. Now me, I'm like, they were just at a bar drinking. I'm not sure that's.
And we addressed that.
And and you talked about it. So you've been drinking? No.
Cough drops.
Cough drops. But it's Smokey. And then she, of course, says the ubiquitous line, there's a guy named Smokey. And you're like, yeah, there's a guy named Smokey. There's always a guy named Smokey. And to which I'm like, oh, you know, because I got the joke. But then you walk in the door, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? Get in here, you know. And so obviously it's a hostage situation, but it's not. And of course, you have the girl in the corner reading the magazine. Oh, stop, whatever, you know, please free me, you know. And so I'm like, what the hell is going on here, you know? And so that was one of those funny things where you realize, okay, it's not what you think it is. And of course, in my mind, I was like, who the hell would get a police standoff started if he's not? I mean, what the hell? What's going on here? And then we start talking about the coins. And everyone's like, you know, and of course Diana's like, what? It's like he wants these coins. It's like the most powerful person on, you know, it's like, you know, Bill Gates is basically what you've said, wants these coins. And you're like, and you go this whole premise that's bat crazy, right? And then, and so I'm kind of, I would have kind of been like, but then you said this one line. Mike, I guess got one more question. Do you remember yesterday? And Mike's like, well, yeah, it's... And then you see that Mike doesn't remember yesterday. All of a sudden, everything about this whole scene changed me. The data dump, all the stupid crap you were doing, all this other, and then all of a sudden it became insanely interesting to me. And now I'm trying to remember stuff that Smokey said that I just kind of like went, okay, coins, okay, Donovan, whatever, okay, get to the point. What? And he was like, and Mike realized it did, and then Smokey sees that Mike, and he's like, yeah. Me neither. Boom, and then that's it. At that point, I was fully invested in this movie because I realized very quickly, it being one of the sit back, relax, we're going to with your mind. I knew something was going to be just completely off at some point, and I loved that. And so you took that data dump, which I hate. I just yeah, coins, yeah. Colin Donovan, right. And all of a sudden, with that one little whatever, you made it insanely interesting. And I needed to rewind and listen to it again because I was like, okay, I missed all kinds of crap I should have been listening to. I missed all that information he was dumping. I dumped it as well, and I got to go back and pick it back up again. I'm like, what did they say? What did he say? So there are ways to do data dumps, and and make it matter because none of the he was saying mattered to me until all of a sudden it did. There are times you've done data dumps from a Smokey, in fact, that don't make any sense, like with the Oracle,
the prophet, Oracle one, prophecy one.
There are two worlds within our home. The one you see, the one you understand. You and the hunter of angels will help save this world.
And once again, sit back, relax, we're going to with your mind. And you set up the premise is, you know, the whole thing about, you know, if your eyes offend you, you should pluck out your eyes. Yeah, I was like, yeah. And I'm like, what? And of course, he's blind, you know. And then he talks to the other guy, to Lance, and then Diamond doesn't believe anything. But then he starts having this little seizure, for lack of a better word. And all of a sudden, a voice comes out of his head that is not his voice. And he is saying some rapture level shit. And I'm like... I'm just writing. Wait, pause. Okay, go ahead. A data dump that is weird and strange. Now, some people like that, some people don't.
Yeah.
And there's the difference. One version is not good for everything you want to say. Let's say you have a movie, a cop movie, let's just say, or show, whatever you're filming, and you need to dump a ton of information on the audience. Well, you can do a Smokey dump if you want, but if you do like 2 or 3 in a show, or if you do a dump and then the cops spend 5 minutes talking about something, and then they go to the office, and then there's another dump about something. I was like, if you are not developing the case, if you're just throwing information out, if you're not, and you can do the whole thing. What's going to do with the cop show? It's like you get a data dump from Smokey, and then you go back to the thing, and then you've got it on the board. Okay, he doesn't like his mother, and he was like that, and you're the Hawaii 5-0 chalkboard thing they used to do, all this stuff, and they had to do it. Jack Lord had to figure out what the heck was going on, and there's Dano. I don't know, but what, and they do that thing, and so they're dumping information, but it is progressing the plot. Okay, that's fine. But if you just do dump after dump after dump, even if it's a Smokey and a cool Smokey and Smokey's little brother, the audience is going to be like, okay, fine. Are we watching a movie or am I taking a test when this is all over?
Well, you bring up a good point there, and the situation or the circumstances and even style can really matter a lot in an exposition dump.
Yeah.
When you go back to the old 70s shows and the 80s shows and the detective shows, whatever, you're also got to understand you're in a different mindset where if you watch TV shows, and they still do it to a great degree today, they're always saying, hey, Jeff, that was a great idea, Jeff. I think that's I think you were right on, Jeff. Mm-hmm. Well, they're doing that because people are just tuning in. Maybe they've watched a couple episodes or they've never watched it before and they tune in. And they need to get caught up. Mm-hmm. So there's this balance between the regular viewer and trying to bring in new people.
Right.
So there is a lot of repetition of information because they're looking at it from the television viewer standpoint.
Right.
One of my favorite shows, which only had 6 episodes, was Police Squad. And they canceled that because you had basically the producer said, well, you have to watch the show. It's like, well, yeah. Well, you have to watch the show. Yes. You have to watch the show to get the show. Yes.
Congratulations for figuring it out.
It's like, well, most people are just doing, doing laundry in the background or something like that. But you have to pay attention to the show to get the laughs and enjoy it.
Right. Because it's a Zucker film.
Yeah. But things are changing now, especially with streaming and everything, where people just sit down on a couch, hit play, and just get sucked into the movie for a while. Mm-hmm. So, those old 70s shows and everything can seem kind of repetitive now because we watch it differently.
Right. Well, you can also do certain things like Magnum P.I.
Yeah.
Which I love Magnum P.I. I go to Hawaii pretty often.
First time on TV, the good guy killed someone in cold blood.
I know, right? Well, yeah, on TV.
Yeah.
But anyway, because Han shot first. But you had a group of characters. There were 4 main characters, really. It was Higgins, who was the old guy, and you had Magnum, and you had TC, and then you had Rick. And they are more former military guys. Tom Magnum was a Navy SEAL, and TC was an Army helicopter pilot, and Rick was in Special Forces. And they all kind of ended up in Hawaii together. And of course Higgins, who's John, what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Anyway, he was the stuffy British guy, who owned everything. And every now and again, you would have something going on, like the beginning of the show, and the crime is happening, or someone's hiring Magnum to do something, or someone knows something, and you're getting into it. And at some point, somebody would say something like, "Hey, Tom, you were in SEAL Group 4, weren't you?" I was like, "Oh, I was in 5 actually. I was in so and so and so and so." Exposition, real quick, reminding you that he was a Navy SEAL. Or I say, "Hey, TC, didn't you ever weren't you in the same?" Yeah, I was with. And so just reminding everybody again that he's a helicopter pilot, and he's the other stuff, But it would catch up the audience who weren't familiar, and the audience who was familiar, it gave them a little bit of additional information that maybe they didn't know. Oh, I didn't know Tom Magnum was in SEAL Team 5. I don't know if he was. I just
Yeah.
I didn't know TC was in, or I didn't know TC was at in Chulai back in '67. I had no idea. But it still establishes they were in Vietnam together. They did this together, and so it gives the audience who's been with the show a little bit of extra information, and the audience who hasn't been with the show insight into the characters, where they're from, what they're doing, what's going on. And so that kind of exposition is pretty cool. Just little pieces of dialogue. Hey, weren't you in the so and so? Hey, Bill, didn't you do that? I was like, hey, your pizza's ready. I don't like pizza. What do you eat pizza? I was like, well, back in the so, and just little stupid things like that you could throw in there They give you the exposition without having to sit there and like, all right, kids, here's what's going on, and having to do a data dump every goddamn day.
And there, I'll give you two different examples of one done right, one done wrong in the Innocent Saga. To this day, I'm still like, oh, I wish I'd have done this differently. And it's in chapter 8 where Laura Ashton comes to Mike and Frank, and starts telling him about the case. She's hiring him for the case. And she gives the whole thing about the turquoise cross. And I will say that's the good thing about independent film is that you can take chances and you can try different things. And that's something that I was trying with that. Right. I wanted to get pulled into this bedtime story. And just to tell it like you would a bedtime story. Kind of reminiscent of the data dump of the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, just telling this legend. And she was trying to do that. And some people, me being a history buff and whatnot, I'll sit at a lecture and I'll just listen and I'm just enthralled because I'm hearing it in my head and playing it. But in a movie,
and you're putting it somewhere in history.
Yeah. So I was trying to do that. So there's just this big data dump, and it wound up all being bullshit. So, but then, as opposed to another big data dump that was in the Green Conspiracy, with a character called Wolf. Where he's giving all the global warming data and everything to Dawson and who I'm calling Beard now. Mm-hmm. Beard. But he does it in but the Wolf character is so fun and crazy to watch.
Yeah.
The information that they do know is like, well, what is, let me show you this. Bloop. He's like, well, what is this? And it's the globe. He's like, well, it's Earth. It's, and it's making fun of that data dump.
Right.
Wolf was so entertaining to watch to begin with. You could just watch exposition for an hour and a half, just because the guy's such a nut job.
Yeah.
One of the most famous data dumps or pieces of exposition has become such a iconic part of American culture, and that is the Star Wars opening credit crawl. Just this massive data dump. And every writing class will tell you not to do that.
Right.
And going back to Green Conspiracy, when we originally made that, you had a voiceover with a title crawl in the original version of that. Right. And I wouldn't change it to this day. I mean, of course, in Innocent Saga it doesn't fit, but to open that movie up with that title crawl was very reminiscent because I was trying to pull from Soylent Green and Blade Runner and being highly influenced by those, and they had opening crawls and I know I get lambasted, but one of my favorite versions of Blade Runner is the one with the narration.
I do see Dune, which is an
insanely
confusing movie. If you've never read the books, I've read the books. I hadn't read them when I watched the movie the first time when I was in 7th grade, and it was on HBO, and it was like a Friday night, and I was sitting around not doing anything, and I turned on this movie. I was like, oh, I've heard of Dune, and I watched this movie, and the whole time I'm like, what the hell is going on? Who are these floating things? Why is there a worm doing that thing? Why has it got light coming out of its head and its butt? What? It just vanished. And the whole time I'm just like, what the f*** is going on? I am so lost. David Lynch, seriously. Give me some freaking subtitles. I just had no idea what was happening.
Well, in the theater, when they originally released it, they had a card that they left out on every seat that's supposed to have the definition and explanation of what everything is. But people would take them, so, people would come in and go, I have no idea.
It's the Bene Gesserit. It's a box of pain. It's a what? How about a box of cookies? What are we doing here, And the floating thing and the Baron it's like the needle assassination things float, the Barons float, Alia floats, everyone's floating, And they got the Fremen and their eyes are turning blue. Why are their eyes turning blue? It's the spice. What the f*** is the spice? It's this other thing. I'm like,
how do you know that?
How do you know that? And what is the goddamn worms got to do with anything? And I'm lost. And then a couple years later, I was sitting around. I was like in 9th or 10th grade, I forget. It was the summertime, and I just ain't got shit going on a Sunday afternoon. And I turn it on, and it's Dune. I'm like, oh God, But they're talking. I hear, so and so was doing this other thing, kind of like Shogun. Okay. All of a sudden, I'm like, because I was like, the Bene Gesserit were so and so and so and so. I was like, oh. And then so I sat down and I watched the movie again. And now this version of the movie, Dune itself was like 2 hours and 45 minutes. This version was over 4. But I sat there for 4 hours and watched that movie and wasn't lost, and I enjoyed it more than I ever did before. Why? I had information. You have to give information. You can't not give information. Okay, it's just a question of how you do it. Now, Dune itself does not lend to exposition. It just doesn't. There are entire times when Paul is talking in his head. And he's not talking to anyone. He's just talking in his head because that's how the book is doing, right?
There's no right way to do it, but there are wrong ways to do it.
Oh, many, yeah.
So it is just about finding your style. I mean, again, in some movies, a title crawl is horrendous.
Yeah.
But in Star Wars, it's iconic.
It's iconic.
Sometimes the narration, like you take the narration out of Blade Runner. Some people love it. Put the narration in. Some people hate it. It's going to be personal taste. So it's just the best you can do is just try to understand what you're doing and try to be creative with it.
Right.